Less than a week to go before the Golden State primary. The new NBC News Wall Street Journal Marist poll has a tight race in California.
Wow! Senator Bernie Sanders seeming to gain momentum in California, which holds its primary in a week.
Clinton needs the win to try to remove any legitimate rationale for him to remain in the race.
A Bernie Sanders win in California is a political earthquake.
Sanders actually has a 1-point lead, 48-47.
It looks to me like we got a lot of people here ready for a political revolution.
But the headlines will be Clinton clinches a number of delegates needed to win the nomination, but loses California.
First time in our nation's history that a woman will be a major party's nominee.
Well, you could be surprised to learn that as many as 3 million votes are left uncounted this morning, and that it could be weeks before they have all been tallied.
Potential million or more, maybe 2 million. I even today heard 3 million potentially. Ballots still to be counted.
How many people did you guys turn away today?
Hillary Clinton is currently leading by about 440,000 votes. So California is not a done deal?
I look forward to the full counting of the votes in California, which I suspect will show a much closer vote than the current vote tally.
My name is Carissa.
I'm Sarah Watts.
My name is Meg Pinto.
My name's Alex, and I decided to be a poll worker on June 7th, 2016.
I was a poll worker.
I was a poll inspector.
I was a poll inspector in San Gabriel, California.
I got involved because I wanted to be on the other side of things when I saw all the problems that were happening all over the country.
Decreases in voter turnout have been found in states that require photo IDs to vote.
Some people still in line to cast their ballots.
Many Brooklyn residents who thought they were registered showed up to vote, only to find their names were not on the list.
We need to count all provisional ballots and say, shut the fucking election down. We deny people the right to vote.
Next speaker.
I really just felt like somebody responsible needed to be there. And yeah, we have 4,700 precincts in Los Angeles County, but at least at one precinct, I knew that I was going to be thorough enough to make sure that I could do what I can.
So I get my own polling place, and I set everything up, manage the staff, and I go over with one of the staff to deliver all of the supplies and the ballots, on election night.
I originally just applied to be a poll worker. When we went through the training a few days before that, they insisted that the inspectors were seasoned people who'd been doing this for years, so if we had any problems, the inspector would be there to help us out. And then 6 days before, I get a call to be the inspector with absolutely no additional training.
I'm standing with Henry B. Stanton, one of the county's most experienced inspectors. Thanks for your time, Henry. Henry.
Oh, you're very welcome.
The only thing they really ask you is, hey, do you want to be an inspector? Do you want to be in charge? And if you say yes, that's it. That's what qualifies you to be an inspector.
Well, there was no selection process. A lot of people just sign up to get paid that day and don't really have anything vested in the democratic process.
If you didn't really do your homework and you didn't sit down and learn this like it was the fucking SATs, then you were really going to have problems because it was all on you.
LA County was so short poll workers, they were giving out inspector jobs as soon as the day before.
We need people that actually know what they're doing to walk in. You can't just pull someone off the street. And that's actually what they suggest that you do. If someone doesn't show up, if it's really, really busy, if there's somebody in there asking you questions about being a poll worker, you can literally pull them off, offer them $80 and just put them on the line.
On election day, within my group chat, my friend who was a poll worker basically put out an SOS asking if anyone could please come help at her polling location because it was a mess. Am I allowed to curse? It was a shit show.
Been a 3-ring shit show.
It was chaos.
So right after voting at my polling location, I just drove over to help out. So I wasn't planning on being a poll worker that day.
The hiring process for these poll workers is there's just nothing. You want in, you got it.
Everybody was confused and nobody was totally qualified to be doing that job.
Sadly, I was significantly more informed than the actual poll workers who underwent training.
Knowing the correct procedures is key to running a successful polling place.
The in-person training was inadequate.
They went through everything as fast as they could.
Well, it's a lot of information to come to speed with, quickly.
Honestly, very confusing.
They are rolling you through like cattle.
It was just thrown at you very quickly.
The way that voters are informed about their duties and rights is absolutely appalling. But it's like drinking out of a fire hose, 100 pages of information.
Whatever happens, it is all in the books.
They're like, oh, if something bad happens, don't call anybody. Look at this first. In the heat of the moment, people are yelling at you, and it's 90 degrees in your precinct, and this is what you have to look at to see and troubleshoot the situation.
The people running the training class said at the beginning that the class can be 2 hours, or it can be 3 hours if everyone has a bunch of questions, and so they would prefer it if we didn't have a bunch of questions.
The question and answer segment was not allowed.
That was it, and then you hand in your stub, which would be $25, and then you're on your way. One training.
And don't forget, you will be working with other poll workers, and your coordinator will only be a phone call away should you need assistance.
No one was reachable. No one was able to give us any help. The coordinator came in sometime in the middle of the day saying that she was representing 3 other polling places. And there was another polling place at the top by the Hollywood sign with 1 person running it. A polling place with 1 person. She took 1 person from us to help this other person out who she said was not all there.
We want to go to Brad Perry because Brad Perry is in a very interesting polling location.
We're over here at Claremont Mortuary. Good morning. Have you voted here before? Is this your first time at the mortuary? Casket or voting? Voting? Okay. Didn't know someone's come here to get a casket or anything.
It was disappointing. It was disappointing because 5 people out of 6 poll workers didn't know about all the idiosyncrasies of how to handle voters. They're voting for the president, and we are the front lines to making their vote matter.
It's just, I don't even see how there can be accountability if there's no proper training to begin with. So how can you blame the person doing something wrong if they're not receiving the kind of information that they need to receive in order to do their job properly?
It's imperative that poll workers know what's going on because the entire election process actually hinges on the poll workers because they decide who gets to vote and how they get to vote. And then that's how we elect our officials. So if they don't know what they're doing, then we don't have a functioning democracy.
I'm sure they'll wait for you. It sounds like they're desperate.
And like 20 minutes later, I get another phone call from somebody who says, oh yeah, we can have this stuff delivered to the house. I have a 4 o'clock training to be a poll inspector. Guys, what the
Well, first off, you take all the stuff that's in the precinct, even the voting machines, live ballots, everything just goes into your house.
Every single study comes to the same conclusion, that the machines are unreliable, they're vulnerable, and they can be hacked.
You were brought a broken machine. They don't test them first?
I can't answer for the county.
Okay.
The first problem that we had was our ballot machine broke.
It hasn't worked all day, and they're all voting provisional.
It is insane to me that the voting machines are just dropped off. They didn't even check my ID when they brought them to my house. I could be anybody. They don't know me. They didn't do any sort of background check on me.
So it wasn't very secure because I have to unlock the box to go through the ballots, to go through all the supplies, to make sure I have everything I need.
Just the ballot boxes has sealed.
But then I literally have the ballots and I have the ink thing and I could actually go through and blot them if I wanted to. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing, now that I think about it, there's nothing that would have stopped if we had filled out 200 ballots ahead of time and just made sure that they matched the ballots in our box. We could have replaced every single person's ballot if we wanted to.
Our voting system is definitely not as secure as I would think it would need to be to decide the President of the United States.
A great democracy does not make it harder to vote than to buy an assault weapon.
There's so many things that you can mess up as a clerk walking in off the street. They just pull you off the street. That you're literally taking, that person is in charge of hundreds of votes and they don't even know the rules to make it a valid vote to help the voter. They're literally making it worse.
Word said people were being put in provisional envelopes when they had no party preference ballots.
Yeah, we did that as well, twice by mistake.
The human error is going to happen somewhere along the lines where their vote struggles to even be counted.
I know for a fact that there are ballots that are invalid.
It's like the game Mousetrap.
Reason to vote won't be counted in California. You are not at the address that is listed.
Signature doesn't match.
If your vote by mail is stolen.
Registration has been switched to another party.
Didn't get a vote by mail envelope.
Voter gets to sign provisional envelope.
So if you're a college student or you're housing insecure on an NPP ballot, you didn't fill out all of the lines in the provisional envelope.
That made me so sick to my stomach.
I guarantee it's the craziest trap you'll ever see. I knew you were a winner.
I had my initial training on May 17th. The woman that I was sitting with, was telling me all about this, poll worker, like subculture that they have and all their flair that they wear on their, their stuff. It was so cute, and it made me feel confident sitting there that I was with people that have been doing this, since the Truman years. So we came to that part and how to process no party preference voters. The woman that I was sitting next to, she started making notes, in the margins of her book saying, oh, this is new.
They're the only handbook I've seen so far that explicitly says, do not inform the voter. And so now they're going against the Secretary of State's own training, which is supposed to be uniform statewide. I mean, that's the fair way to run an election, isn't it?
I'm listening to the instructor, and he's saying that all non-party preference voters have to specify what ballot they want, or they're going to be given provisional ballots by default.
I have to say the magical phrase, hello, I should like a Democratic crossover ballot, please.
So you're telling us that provisional ballots will be the default ballot unless non-party preference voters specifically ask for a different ballot? Yes.
The introduction of that crossover ballot is really, what's unnecessarily complicating this, and combined with the fact that vote by mail has become so popular. Just send them one of each ballot.
I am of the belief the Democrats wanted this election to be messy because it benefited the candidates that had been organizing from the start, who has older voters, who have more experience in voting.
The presidential primary is the most complex election that we conduct in the state of California. There are elements of it that by design are challenging for voters, cumbersome for poll workers, and difficult to administer.
Experts spoke about California's record voter registration and the need for improvement, such as making sure no party preference voters, a voter bloc believed to heavily favor Sanders, could easily vote for president.
For no party preference voters, it was honestly quite a challenge. We tried everything we could think of with our limited budget to make sure the information was out there.
If you're aware of the mistake when you're making it, can you still call it a mistake?
The Secretary of State, of course, is close with Hillary Clinton. There are whole numbers of so-called Democrats in this state that don't seem to care about votes being discounted and thrown away. It's profoundly disturbing.
What do you make of the fact that the Secretary of State, which is the person who's responsible for handling elections, is a partisan position? Like, doesn't that seem like a conflict of interest in any state for the Secretary of State to endorse a candidate?
And I understand we're all people, we're going to have our leanings, but he was actively campaigning for her. And then you're also designing policies which have a direct effect on what voting groups come out. In terms of restricting MPP voters in this election, I think it's pretty blatant.
In fact, the quote was, provisional ballots will be your best friend all day. Oh, provisional supply kit.
I don't think anybody really had any idea about the significance of what ballot would be counted when. If I were to put a percentage on it, 40% of them were provisional, and a lot of them were vote by mail.
Out of 319, they give out 70 provisional ballots.
Less than 275 people that showed up to vote, and we gave out 57 provisional ballots.
I shared a precinct in Pasadena where I witnessed 157 provisional votes out of 300. That's more than half.
We had about 54 provisional voters. It was mostly young people that were on the list.
We had polling locations that had 80% of the ballots that were being cast at any one moment being provisional.
All of those are provisional from today? So has it been down all day? Are you kidding? No, how many is there right there?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
There's like 200 ballots there.
Basically, the way the ROV instructed us to give out provisional ballots was like an NFL player in a strip club making it rain.
The fact that poll workers are just handing out provisionals like candy, just like, here you go, without questioning why the person might even need it in the first place, really disenfranchises the voter, and oftentimes voters are not even educated that they need to keep their ticket stub from the provisional ballot to check and make sure it's even counted.
Comparatively to other states where they have very low rates of validation, California does validate and count provisional ballots at a very high rate.
This was the number of provisional ballots cast. So at best, 38,700 voters in LA County alone are going to be disenfranchised on provisional ballots. That's the number that they're proud of, where they're like, hey, we do better than anyone else. We count all these ballots.
And we are filing a lawsuit which will put the spotlight on these exit polls. We announced we were going to file such a lawsuit to compel the news media to report the actual exit poll results so that the public would know if there's apparent fraud. And guess what the media did? They canceled the exit poll. You're going to sue us to make us make it public, or we just won't do it.
Use the Lavender Vote by Mail list to update your roster by finding each voter listed and writing VBM in the signature column.
The biggest problem I saw at my poll was voters who were on the roster as vote by mail but had never registered as vote by mail.
Or knew for a fact that they did not sign up for vote by mail, or tried to take their name off of the vote by mail, or it never showed up.
One time they turned the whole precinct vote by mail passively, and it was only by one letter, and lots of people never knew. They went to their polling place, it was closed, so they went to the other nearest polling place, and they all voted, but provisionally, because they had all gotten mail ballots that they didn't even know they were due to get. But that was hundreds of voters.
And they didn't know what I was talking about when I said, where's your vote by mail ballot?
The majority of those people were Spanish speakers or first-time voters.
I took that very personally because I saw a lot of very enthusiastic people that have never voted before. When you have disenfranchised over half of the people by telling them that they got their ballot when they didn't, they never got it. How easy is that?
Mail came today and I still haven't gotten anything, so.
Oh, okay.
Here I am.
That means 2 ballots were sent to me and got not to me.
I think the other part that was disconcerting for me was that there were so many voters who initially questioned what the roster says, but then they gave the system the benefit of the doubt. So we gave them a provisional ballot as if they just forgot it, or it got lost in the mail. And then they would come back and be like, I never signed up for vote by mail. They trusted the system, and the system totally failed them.
I had people with their voter registration cards in front of me, giving it to me, saying, I am not vote by mail. And in the roster, it was listed as VBM. That's criminal.
We used to have anecdotal evidence after we did the research that people who did vote at the polls because they never got their mail ballot looked back and the record shows a mail ballot was counted in their name for that election. That we've always thought this was evidence of a capacity for insider fraud.
If you guys received a vote by mail ballot and someone went in believing they were casting their vote for the first time and cast a provisional ballot, which one takes precedence? Which one is counted?
The vote by mail ballot that was sent in initially would be the vote that counts.
Does that seem like a strange policy if a person believes they didn't submit that ballot?
I mean, I can't really go into policy and what's right and what's wrong. That is our procedure, though.
And that's unsettling to me because if that by mail ballot should be intercepted, if they're voting provisionally on election day, I mean, it seems to me that should override the vote by mail ballot.
As an inspector, you get these supplemental roster sheets. They're blue, and they come in the mail the weekend before. So I got mine on Saturday and Monday. And essentially, as an inspector, what you do is you take these, you put them into the back of your official roster. And what they told us is that there's something that changed with that person. Either they're a new voter, or they moved, or their account has been updated in some way, right? And you find all the names, and you write VBM next to them, right? Vote by mail. And when I went in the next day, I lost count, right? People that came in that I hand updated VBM. They didn't know that they were a vote by mail. They didn't have their vote by mail. And then somehow in the system, last minute, and it's really hard not to think that this is some kind of grand scheme. These were people that had no idea what we were talking about with vote by mail. So if you look at this like a normal, rational person, it just seems ridiculous. If I had just not updated their names, they would have not voted provisionally and their votes would have counted in the first initial tally.
Our biggest issues at our polling location were that people were showing up as vote by mail voters. It took me fighting with them for them to finally consider giving them a provisional ballot instead of just turning them away.
You can call them.
Yes, right now.
I've been to the polling place 3 times today, correct? I chose Democrat. I'm at the polling place, I am no party preference. And I'm also vote by mail. And the only ballot I received in the mail is an American Independent ballot. Right? She said, wow.
One family, the father they had been trying to switch his registration from Republican to Democrat for 8 years, because for 8 years they've had this issue that they keep switching him back to Republican and he keeps trying to switch back to Democrat, and for some reason it's been an issue for 8 years.
Another problem that I confronted was that there was people that showed up, their parties had been changed.
People who had been registered as Democratic their whole entire life were now showing up as Republican.
And they were like, there's no way that I did that.
So I'm Steve Stokes. I ran in 2014 for House of Representatives as an independent or no party preference. And when I decided to run in 2016 for U.S. Senate, I was going to follow Bernie Sanders' lead and run as a Democrat. And so I registered as a Democrat at the county office, but I was never changed into Democrat status. So as I was telling the poll workers, it was very obvious that there was that mistakes can be made because I was on the ballot as a Democrat and yet was on the voter rolls as no party preference. And if my status wasn't updated from no party preference to Democrat, think of how many other ballots that might have happened to people who would not have had the tenacity to pursue getting the actual correct ballot eventually.
So I got my mail-in ballot and it said Republican, and I'm like, I've never been Republican. So I called the registrar's office and she said that indeed I was Republican since 2010. And I said, in the 2012 election, I received a Democratic ballot and I voted Democrat. That would make no sense for me to be registered Republican and receive my Democratic ballot. And she said that in 2010, electronically, it says that my account was switched to Republican, but that all of my signed paperwork from 2012 was Democrat. And she said, this is not right. This shouldn't be this way. And I said, well, can we fix it? And she says, I'm going to talk to my supervisor about this and call you back within the hour. And she never called me back. I ended up calling her back the next day and someone else answered the phone and goes, oh no, it says 2012, everything was changed electronically and you submitted a form for re-registering for the Republican Party. And I said, no. And she said, well, your social security number's here and your birth date's here and your signature's here, so you signed it. And I said, no, I didn't. I have no reason, nor would I ever say I'm Republican. She said, well, if you have a problem with the registry, then you can drive here to Norwalk and you can pay the fee so that you can view your file. And I said, wait, so I need to drive 50 miles to your location on my dollar and pay just to look at my file to verify that that's my signature? If your computer says something and my handwritten signature doesn't, shouldn't you fix the computer error? It would take 2 clicks of a mouse. To me, it sounds like it's all just BS.
They had her voting record that she voted Democrat in the last election.
Right.
Why would you argue that? Wouldn't the benefit of the doubt be with her?
No, apparently not. And I mean, her vote won't be counted.
Well, I'm here today because I was one of the people that was purged from the system, even though I've been registered since 2014, since I moved here.
Why in a computer era where states require IDs, Ohio allows 17 types of IDs, why would you deregister anyone from the voting rolls? There's not enough room on the computer.
And I'm trying to go vote, and the thing is, I'm not on the list. I have proof. I go on LAvote.net. I am registered as a Democrat, but I'm somehow not on the roster, so I'm not allowed to vote. And this has been something I've been trying to deal with since about 11 or 12 this morning, and it is now 3 o'clock.
I'm excited about voting. I love that I have this opportunity that I get to have my voice, but not everyone is going to have that because they don't know this is happening.
We had some issues with people not being on the rosters, and the hard part was some of them wouldn't stay long enough to find out why. They were just pissed off and walked off.
My name isn't on anyone's list.
Yeah, I have a voter ID right here. There's a voter ID number right here.
So many people showed up that weren't on our list. These were all people who were registered to vote, had proof of registration, had sample ballots with their name, address, and our polling place location on it, and yet they were not on our roster. 1, 2, 3, 17, 18, 19. So it's about 28 before 4 p.m., and that was before the big rush. By the middle of the day, we realized that that was happening more often than not, and we were actually relieved when we found someone's name on the roster.
So what's happening?
None of these people are on the roster.
Most of the people that weren't on the roster, unfortunately, were young, first-time voters who were very excited to vote for the first time.
Online I was active, but then I wasn't on the list. I wasn't on the blue list either, so I had to vote provisionally.
Even the table that was in my polling place was just handing out provisional ballots, like sometimes not even checking the supplemental roster.
Can you show me your name again? Because apparently there was something that we did not check. Oh, there's the roster. Is that it?
Yes, actually, I don't really know what this is.
But how many people did you guys turn away today?
Okay, so what's going on there?
I had to go to a Staples to get to a fax machine and pay for the copies and get them back because that list was not supplied with all the other registers. It said something about voters on top, and I said, those are the papers I need. Yeah, I don't know, I felt kind of funny doing it, because I'm not sure who's supposed to be handling this material.
I wrote no signature, so it could be who.
Sir, can I talk to you outside, please? Today has been a really big struggle for me. There have been several times today where I just want to scream. The lack of training. We have numerous people who are nowhere near properly trained, myself included. I'm covering the precinct next to me because their inspector is completely, utterly useless. We wound up opening late because that table was nowhere near ready. I'm scared. This is how it's been working for how long? And it's not working. Clearly it's not working, but this is how they've been doing it.
Can project that Hillary Clinton will win.
The big one, California.
How did your wrap-up go?
Terrible.
What did shock me, though, there were not one, but 2 instances where I had to be sent out back on a route to go find missing ballots. And the ballot box just happened to be in the 2 fire stations. They were just left. But in order for that to happen, both the courier assistant, the inspector, and one of the other poll workers need to forget that the couriers need to be there to pick that up. That took 4 people to forget their training.
In my training, none of my training said that you print out the tallies.
The fact that we were supposed to do that, could have done that, is There's no way to double check now.
The law says that you, as a voter, can go to your precinct and find the tallies taped to the wall somewhere near where you voted, and they're up for, I've heard 24 hours, I've also heard for 48 hours. But again, I believe it varies county by county. So I have not been able to find anybody yet that has found a tally in Los Angeles.
When I printed the election summary reports, when I was closing down the machine at the end of the night, the crossover Democratic ballot report still showed up as 0. So this is the no party preference Democratic crossover ballot. As you can see, total vote count, it says 0. So it has 0 for presidential preference, 0 for Senate, 0 for all these things. Want to see how many ballots were actually in the box for this? Oh, all those ballots. So we have 39 no party preference Democratic ballots. These were stuck into the machine today, and none of these are counted on the report. Then you come over here, and the nonpartisan ballot, there's 1. But over here, it says 40. So I don't know if somehow the machine made a mistake and added them together, but here's the problem. Even if all these other numbers are correct, guess what's not on here? Any presidential candidate. And obviously, as you can see from what's showing, a dominant number of those are for Bernie Sanders. So I called my supervisor, I asked her what to do, and she had no idea. Her answer to me was, use your best discretion. This is bonkers.
I know it didn't go well. And so that's what made me so sad in thinking about other states and other places that don't have the resources that Los Angeles has.
You know, we're in California. We're one of the most progressive states in the country that has some of the most open elections in the country. And it really appalled me to see that as a native Angelino, my hometown, my home county, had so many election problems. It's just really upsetting that in 21st century America, we have to be dealing with election problems of this magnitude.
I have always believed that elections were well run. I did not expect there to be a problem among Democrats. I believe that there was. I believe Democrats were suspecting about the Democrats. And I would have not believed that if I had not been closely involved in this election.
If you step back and look at the way the primary system works, it was not designed with voters in mind. It was designed around the function of nominating under party rules.
Going into this, we all knew that the problem with the provisionals was going to happen. We didn't know how it was going to happen. We definitely thought that it was going to be a ballot shortage, but it ended up to be more vote by mail, shifting of registrations, people not being on the rolls, even when they had proof they were in the party. And I think what's interesting about that is knowing that it was coming and actively trying to fight against it. There was still not much that we could do. How does it make you feel to know that elections get called when there's so many votes uncounted?
Well, it's an array of emotions. First, I'm sad. I'm really mad.
My community had so many vote-by-mail ballots that weren't counted that I know went to Sanders. With only 3 ballots difference right now, it's going to flip. But I feel like it's going to flip when nobody's going to be paying attention, once the media has moved on, once the world has moved on and basically said, the election is over, deal with it.
The loss in California was much, much bigger than anybody anticipated.
Will you be asking for him to step aside soon?
You can imagine how furious this is making some Democratic voters.
We will not allow voter suppression in California or America.
We figured for granted, everybody knows what they're doing. And we're finding out nobody knows what they're doing.
And we're trying to find out who's accountable. Because everyone's pointing fingers, and we just want to be able to vote.
Who's to blame for these long lines?
Well, the voters for getting in line.
Your guys' concern, right? Not ours. They're the county's concern.
I have to say, I don't think it was our fault.
Parties make the rules about who can participate in their primary. It is very frustrating.
It was honestly quite a challenge. We tried everything we could think of.
It should not be this difficult.
I know that we complain about the South disenfranchising voters with voter ID laws and doing all these things to disenfranchise voters who are not in their voting blocks. I think California ends up disenfranchising just as many people. They do it in the name of voter fraud. They don't like the term voter fraud. I've heard Alex Padilla say,
voter fraud, we hear the terms a lot. Throughout California and throughout the country, it is nearly non-existent. Oh, God.
But all of these measures are A, to prevent voter fraud, and B, disenfranchising giant numbers of people.
Even small percentages, mail-in ballots, 3% aren't counted. 3% of a third of your state's population.
19,230 people for vote by mail who are likely not to get counted, plus 38,000 people who aren't going to be counted as provisionals, 60,000 people just in LA who took the time to vote, made the effort, educated themselves, went through the process, and now will be disenfranchised. Like, that's a whole stadium of people.
Your vote could be the one that counts. A difference of only a few votes can decide an election.
After seeing how many people, how many young people have been just pulled into this election, and having this be the result, or this what happened, you know, during their first experience voting, it makes me feel sad.
After being a poll inspector, I feel like democracy doesn't exist.
Well, jaded is an understatement.
It was soul crushing, to be honest. I did not feel like it was democracy that day.
It can be a little disappointing at times to think that this is our democracy.
Democracy would allow equal access to voting. They wouldn't have restrictions to voting.
It was really disheartening to see so many people have to go through so much just to be able to vote. It's a basic right.
Less and less people are involved in our democratic process. Why is that? Because maybe it's not such a democratic process after all.
Just the fact that they have those ballots and it's up to their discretion whether or not your vote counts bothers me. What is it that we're doubting about these votes? They skipped a step. I get it. They might have forgotten to sign something. They might have done something incorrectly. They weren't on a voter roll when they should have been. Their party preference was switched.
Might have moved recently.
All of these reasons, to me, don't seem like good reasons for a person's vote in a presidential election not to be counted. It seems like the process is coming before the right.
I believe in democracy. I believe it can work. It made me believe that there's less democracy here in the United States, definitely.
The reason that I volunteered to do this today was because I know how screwed up and broken this system is, and I wanted a first-hand account, and this freaks me out.
This is about our basic right to vote. And I believe the system itself is so disorganized and there's such little due diligence that there's absolutely no way that we still retain that basic right. Because when it comes down to it, if you can't have a fair election, then who even cares what's on the ballot?
A true democracy does not decide the winner before all the votes are counted correctly.
I used to believe in this democracy. I'm still trying to, but it needs help.
Would you ever participate in this process again? How has this made you feel?
It's kind of discouraging, actually. I'm like, I don't really want to do this anymore, but the part inside me that's like, I'm not going to let them win is like, no, I have to be a part of this again.
I feel obligated to do it again. I feel obligated to find other people like me to do it again.
We have people lining up to come and give testimony of what happened on election day. Look at these folks. They're all coming out, and we have a lot of people inside as well.
You know, I did this because I wanted to be witness to it and I wanted to help.
The wool has been pulled off.
The question is, if you call the American vote into question, you're immediately a conspiracy theory, you're an American, trust but don't verify.
Our democracy is based on a piece of paper that says I can prove who won.
Bernie Sanders supporters, on the other hand, are acting like this is a conspiracy theory.
Like, it can all sound like conspiracy theory until you see it yourself. And once you see it yourself, it's just kind of an overwhelming, like, I just felt sick by the end of the night, because it's like when you see it for yourself, it just changes everything. You're Neo from the Matrix and you took the pill and now you're awake, and like, I can't unknow what I know now.
The same thing is with the political revolution, is that people are now awake, they're alert, they're active, and they're just, they're angry, they're mad as hell, and they're not gonna take it anymore.
Voter suppression is real, and whether or not they mean to do it, it's happening.
And so many of them aren't rational. Nothing has been stolen here.
Just you wait. After this election, they'll come out and pretend like they were on this side the whole time. Same-day registration was on the books in California months before this election. They just didn't implement it.
And I think that it's all part of the system where you can disenfranchise low-income voters or new voters, multilingual voters.
Latinos que puedan votar.
The less people that come out to vote, the easier it is for the establishment to hold on to their positions.
Trust in the election process is central to democracy.
We can improve this system so much by just giving the voter the benefit of the doubt.
With a few easy changes, everyone can have a voice.
Open primaries and automatic registration.
All great movements, sisters and brothers, start from the bottom, not from the top.
We are the people. We will have our voices heard.
The party is not the people. The people are the party.
So everyone that wants to vote can be treated with dignity. This is the fight for the soul of our democracy. And we will not be silenced. We gonna fight on.
The progressive movement has started. It is going. And now it is our job to figure out on a local level how we're going to make it actually work for us.
I don't think this is over. Do you?
The struggle continues.